Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland. This is for the week of June 29th. And we had a good talk with our friend Ewan Haig, and now we're looking forward to another good talk with our friend Pat Handlin. Pat has been a guest on this show before. A lot of it has been talking about pipelines, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Dakota Access Pipeline, which people remember in 2016. There were a lot of demonstrations around it, and Pat will fill us in on what that was about. And then we're going to take a look at another pipeline over here in Lake Michigan under the Straits of Mackinac. What is that one called?
Line 5.
Line 5.
Enbridge Line 5.
So we're talking Dakota Access Pipeline and Enbridge Line 5 pipeline. So good day to you, Pat Handlin.
Hello. Hi, Michael James.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay,
Good to
so
see you.
You got back to me. I know I always am asking you to get a hold of me if you got some information you want to share, and you did it. And I was so glad when people actually seek me out for coming on the show. And why don't you start filling us in on the pipeline question?
Okay. So you remember, of course, and I'm sure all of your listeners remember the Standing Rock protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. They were, there were probably 15,000 people there in North Dakota. And unfortunately, because Trump was elected, the pipeline, it had been shut down, at least temporarily, and it went forward, and oil's been flowing through it to southern Illinois, all these years since early 2017. This is just a recap. The federal district court in Washington said that the Army Corps of Engineers had failed to do a proper environmental impact statement when they allowed Energy Transfer, the company that built and runs it, the pipeline, the DAPL, that they had failed to do a proper environmental impact statement. And that was because the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe sued in federal court. They've really led this fight. And so the judge ultimately, after several years of litigation, said, yes, you're right. They did not do a proper environmental impact statement. He found that the easement allowing the pipeline to flow under the Missouri River was illegal, not properly done. He vacated it, and he ordered the flow of oil to stop. That was appealed. The appellate court said, yes, you're right. The Army Corps of Engineers failed to do a proper environmental impact statement. We uphold your decision to vacate the easement, allowing it to go under the Missouri River. But there isn't enough information in the record to uphold your injunction ordering the flow of oil to stop. So it has continued.
What does easement mean?
An easement
what does vacate mean?
Okay, easement is like legal. People have easements like a driveway across somebody else's land. Right. That's an easement. It's not ownership, but it allows you to use it. Land, it's related to land. This is related to the land under the river, to the river. And vacate means to say that it doesn't exist any longer. It's not a valid legal document. And it never was.
So it's been vacated, but it hasn't stopped the flow of oil.
Exactly. And so the Army Corps of Engineers is conducting a new environmental impact statement. They haven't decided yet in the last year and a half whether or not they should stop the flow of oil, which they could do. However, here's the new information. It's not really new. It's new to us, new to the public, that in October 2021, Energy Transfer was charged with two separate criminal cases involving 48 environmental crimes by the Attorney General of Pennsylvania in relation to their construction of a pipeline in Pennsylvania during 2017, the same year that they did the horizontal directional drilling under the Missouri River. So, and the criminal environmental crimes are for, quote, repeatedly contaminating our lakes, rivers, streams, and groundwater with drilling fluid from 21 drill sites across Pennsylvania. So when you go under a river, they do what they call horizontal directional drilling. They go deep under the river and they have to drill a hole to put the pipes through. And they use drilling, what they call drilling fluid or drilling mud. So the Energy Transfer, this is more from Pennsylvania, failed to report environmental damages and criminal use of unapproved additives in the drilling fluid, which included things like diesel fuel. So they basically poured diesel fuel into people's well water, into rivers, into groundwater in Pennsylvania. So they entered a no contest plea, which resulted in a conviction on all 48, and they were ordered to pay $10 million to make the water sources that were most damaged cleaner and safer. But that's not the end. So based on that, the Environmental Protection Agency in October 2022 issued what's called a notice of debarment, 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 which I had not known about previous to this, that prevents Energy Transfer, the company that owns and continues to operate the Dakota Access Pipeline through which oil flows, which prevents them from pursuing or renewing federal government contracts or federal financial assistance agreements. So it means that they couldn't get a contract to clean government buildings. They can't get a contract with the federal government to do anything. So the question is an easement a contract? I don't know. Can they get a new easement or new authority to maintain the flow of oil under the Missouri River? I mean, I think that's something that will ultimately, hopefully, be litigated. But the debarment and what they did in Pennsylvania was really appalling, in my mind. And also, and they didn't, they hid it. They didn't reveal it. It was found by the folks in Pennsylvania who were impacted. So then and that's not all. Believe it or not.
Keep it coming.
So in December 2021, Energy Transfer was the subject of proceedings initiated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC, FERC, for similar conduct involving drilling fluid during horizontal directional drilling operations under the, I'm gonna butcher the name of this river, Tuscarawas River in Ohio, when, quote, a large inadvertent release of 2 million gallons of drilling mud reached the ground surface and flowed into a protected nearby wetland. Testing conducted by the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency revealed the presence of petroleum hydrocarbons consistent with, guess what? Diesel fuel.
Wow.
Sound familiar? Also, hydraulic oil and non-toxic but unapproved lubricants to combat drilling difficulties and keep up with drilling progress demands. So FERC ordered a penalty of $40 million in that case. But that's what's called a rule to show cause. So Energy Transfer has an opportunity to respond, but it's significant that the government has taken these steps and that Energy Transfer has been caught, in the Midwest doing these really awful things to the land and water.
Let me ask you, is there any pushback? Is it a political issue in like North Dakota between a Republican, kind of a pretty heavy red state, and this cause of ending the pipeline going under the Missouri River? And the same would be true in possibly, when we have a federal government now, which is in the hands of the Democrats on one level. But I'm just wondering what's the pushback, even in Ohio, from like red state advocate types, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, North Dakota is actually a very, some people in North Dakota, I mean, obviously the tribe has land in North Dakota and South Dakota.
Yeah.
And originally they're what's called unceded territory included almost all of North Dakota, South Dakota, the Black Hills, Montana. That's a whole other interesting story that I would highly recommend people read, because for a number of years, the Lakota, which is what the Sioux's name has been, not in English, they controlled much of that. They controlled it. They won military battles against the U.S. military. But anyway, that's another story, an important one. But but right now these actions are taken by the federal government. So the state government really doesn't have much to say about these actions by the Environmental Protection Agency, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So they really can't push back. Although, if Burgum becomes Trump's vice presidential nominee, he's a big oil and gas man in terms of supporting it. I don't know what his financial interests are, but Trump also, once he took office the last time he was elected, one of the first things he did was to approve the completion of the Dakota Access Pipeline, direct the Army Corps of Engineers to approve them going under the Missouri River, because they hadn't yet done that.
So what's happening now? Their Energy Transfer, this company, they have a right to appeal this decision.
Well, they pled no contest to the Pennsylvania environmental charges. So that's a done deal. They cannot appeal I guess they probably can appeal the Environmental Protection Agency debarment, but they have, in 3 years, they can ask that it be overturned.
So we'll wait and see on all that. And oil, right now, the oil continues to flow.
It continues to flow.
And let me ask you briefly before we go on to talking about close to home up in Michigan and this, with the Enbridge. Let me just ask you, you were out there during the Dakota Access Pipeline demonstrations. And just give us a little brief, description of the spirit of the people and the demonstrations.
It was one of the most, the word that comes into my mind is compelling, but that's not even, it was one of the most moving things I've ever experienced actually in my life, because just the feeling in the camp was so welcoming, and there was so much camaraderie. People made food for each other. There were tents where food was made. They followed the Lakota principles of being, which include generosity, and so it was great. It was difficult. The law enforcement was incredibly violent.
Yeah.
a lot of people were very harmed. And I went back for like several years representing more than 800 people were charged with misdemeanors. And some people were charged with felonies. But we won most of those cases because, they were flawed to begin with. And but I watched a lot of even though I wasn't at a lot of the demonstrations, I watched a lot of the video to prepare for the cases. And, it's just like law enforcement, there were videos of people being pepper sprayed in the face and, just really kind of horrendous stuff like that.
Well, Pat Handlin, let's keep talking about pipe.
Okay.
Let's switch over close to home. We've got a thing known as the Enbridge Line 5. It runs through Wisconsin, through land of the Bad River Band.
The Lake Superior, Chippewa, right.
It also runs under the Straits of Mackinac. And
exactly.
So there's a lot of pushback on it from the state of Michigan and a number of tribes there.
Right.
Fill us in on what's going on with that, because I first heard about that from our sometimes co-host producer, Katie Hogan. She was all over that, and we did talk about it on the show. What do you got now on the challenge?
Okay, so that's being challenged in two different places. In the state of Michigan by the Attorney General and the Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor. I mean, she's been challenging this since 2020.
Like her. I think she wants to run for president next time.
Yeah. I mean, this time would be better, but hey, what are you going to do? And and the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, who are in Wisconsin, they've challenged it also. They filed in 2019. So in both cases, two separate judges, same line 5. It comes from Canada, from the tar sands of Canada, which is the dirtiest oil on the planet, through Wisconsin into Michigan and back into Canada. And it's 71 years old. So, So initially, the Bad River Band had allowed an easement across their land. But the pipe's been operating for like more than 10 years, I think 13 years, actually more than that, a number of years without authority of the Bad River Band. They refused to renew the easement allowing the pipeline to go through their land. And part of the reason they did that was because there's a river, the Medicine River, that's had a lot of, where the pipe is located, has had a lot of erosion. And last year it was within 11 feet of the pipe. So there's a real substantial risk of the pipe failing and dumping oil into that river and onto the land of the Bad River Band. So their lawsuit, so I'm going to leave that and then go to Michigan. So in Michigan, in 2020, a judge in Michigan State Court, entered an injunction in a case filed by Dana Nessel, the Attorney General of Michigan, entering a temporary restraining order, ordering the pipeline shut down, ordering them to stop the flow of oil. Did they do that? No. No, they didn't. So they appealed it. They didn't appeal it in the state court. They tried to have the case removed from state court to federal court. And that ended up being appealed to the federal appellate court that includes Michigan, the 6th Circuit. And the 6th Circuit just entered an order returning the case to the Michigan State Court. So that's the update on the Michigan case. I mean, that just happened, which is a very good thing, because the judge has already issued an injunction. Now the Bad River Band's case goes to the Seventh Circuit, a different federal appellate court. The Bad River Band filed in federal court, and they got an injunction also from the federal district judge, ordering that the pipeline be removed from their land in 2026. Not that it be shut down immediately, but that it be shut down and removed in 2026. The judge found that the Enbridge had done a conscious and willful trespass over their land. And he also put in some other, contingencies in if the erosion became worse and there was an even greater risk than there existed last year. So that was appealed to the Seventh Circuit. And the Seventh Circuit heard arguments in February of this year. And they wanted the U.S. They wanted the U.S. government to weigh in on it because there's a pipeline treaty between the U.S. and Canada. So right now the U.S. is between treaties. They've got two treaties which are at this point inconsistent with each other because Canada wants their 71-year-old pipeline that's threatening the Bad River Band territory with a huge oil spill and a spill under the Straits of Mackinac, which would do incredible harm to Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, land that's sacred. So 33 tribes have filed what's called amicus curiae briefs together, one supporting shutdown of this pipeline. And so now we have to wait and see what the Seventh Circuit will do in Wisconsin.
Well, so we're going to have to wait and see on both these pipelines to see when the oil flow stops. And let's hope
it does.
We hope it does. And on a global or on a broader sense, we've got to, you said at the outset of the show before we started, actually, you said we need to shut down oil and gas completely.
We do.
Give me a minute on that.
Well, global warming, I don't think there are many people who question that the planet is warming.
Even Republicans are starting to see it.
When Texas, yeah, exactly. People in Texas, people in the Central Plains, people across the country, how can people not acknowledge that the storms that are happening were predicted by scientists, climate scientists, many years ago, and what they predicted would happen because of the warming planet is happening. So, and the reason for climate change is burning of fossil fuels. Yeah. So one thing that I think Biden has done well is to encourage to encourage wind and solar.
Yeah. And electric cars.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that every place somebody wants to put a mine, it should happen, or every place somebody wants to put a windmill, it should happen. But it means that, there are farmers in Wisconsin and Indiana who are getting paid rent by the companies that put pipelines on their land, and they can still farm. So we just have no alternative to shutting down the oil and gas industry. And I just learned yesterday that at this point, the U.S. is producing more oil and gas than any other country in the world.
We are.
More than Saudi Arabia.
We're running out of time, and I want to thank you for contacting me and giving us this update. I know that a number of people who listen or watch this show are really environmentally conscious and active in their own ways to try to change the situation. And you clearly are doing good, and we appreciate that. So keep up the good work.